Hi, everybody. This is Zet Harbor with the Human Design Projectors Society and podcast. In human design, when you look at your body graph, you will see that there are shapes, and some of those shapes will have colors in them. Some will be white, unless you're a reflector, and then they'll all be white. These shapes are called centers in human design, and they can be understood as energy hubs where the energy flows in and through. And each one of these centers has its own unique set of attributes. And so if you have one that is colored in, that means that you have a dependable and fixed way of experiencing or accessing those attributes, those qualities, those energies. And if that shape is white, that means you're going to have an inconsistent and unreliable way of experiencing and accessing those energies. Now, the phrase inconsistent and unreliable, that's kind of negative in our culture. That equates with being a flake. Instead, here it's not meant to be a negative. What it's meant to be is it's simply not fixed. It's not like a groove in a vinyl record. Okay. Whereas when it's colored in, it's much more like having the grooves of your song already carved into the vinyl of your life. So the openness, which is created through these white centers, that's where, sure, you're going to have inconsistent and unreliable ways of experiencing and accessing those energies, which also means you have more flexibility, more resilience, potentially a broader expanse of ways that you can experience that. Now, if you have one or more gates activated in one of those white shapes, one of those undefined centers, that's going to color the form that those energies will show up for you in. And so learning, first of all, which of your centers are colored in, defined, which of your centers are white, which is open or undefined, which, if those centers are white, do they have any gates that are activated in them? Because that makes the difference between simply undefined or completely open. And as you learn these subtleties of difference, that's going to help you understand what's truly you and what is the rest of the world, basically imprinting itself upon you. Now, it's not necessarily going to carve as deeply as the grooves of your song in your vinyl, in your defined centers. However, that doesn't mean you won't believe that it is. So this is where we begin to explore the difference between our true self and the not self. And again, not self can often be used in a way that makes it sound negative, but it's really not. It's just what's not you. And what is you is going to be in the colored in centers, as well as the lines in between those centers. If they have red or black or both, then that makes them a fixed part of you. Learn that story of who you are so that you are living correctly as your true self. Learn when the story you're hearing in your head or hearing from other people is actually not you. And therefore, yes, you're going to feel the effects of it. You're going to have all the energy kind of moving through you potentially, but it isn't you. And so you won't sort of try to root it in you and live the way that it's directing you to live. One of the areas that I've noticed this show up for me is that, first of all, to explain that there are three awareness centers in the body graph, the ajna, the splenic, and the solar plexus. The splenic is your intuition and instinct awareness, awareness for survival and well-being. Solar plexus is your energy for your emotions, right? It's your emotional awareness. Each of these awareness centers have gates, and each of those gates has its own specific fear. So if you have one of the gates in your ajna activated or defined, so for instance, I have gate 17, and it's in a complete channel, so it's defined. And with gate 17, the fear is fear of having my opinions challenged or questioned. So whenever I have something to say, or if I am being asked to contribute to a conversation or make a presentation, every single time I hear that little voice, sometimes not so little, that is really speaking on behalf of that fear, that my opinions will be challenged and not in a fun way. The other gate that I have in my ajna is gate 43. That also for me is a defined channel. So that gate carries with it the fear that I will be rejected for being weird. And that's true every time, hands down. I will absolutely have that mental fear when I feel like there's some expectation out there that I need to meet. And the other gate in my ajna is gate 4. And with that comes the fear of chaos. So whenever something in my life doesn't go exactly the way I was hoping or imagined, truly, it's one of the first things is just, oh my God, there's going to be chaos. And I'm going to sound like a weirdo and people are going to reject me. And then they're going to challenge me for what I think. Not to mention down in my splenic, I have gate 48, and that fear is the fear of inadequacy. Suddenly I will feel incredibly inadequate and that I don't have enough depth to, to actually allow me to feel adequate. And finally, in my solar plexus, I have the 22, and with that comes a fear of silence, that no one will listen to me or think I'm worthwhile listening to, or maybe there's no one out there who's worth listening to. And then gate 49, which brings a fear of the unpredictability of nature and the world. So what I have learned now to do is when I have a situation where I feel that I am maybe taking a risk, or where maybe I'm trying to prove myself or feel like I need to prove myself, or I feel like I need to demonstrate my competency, or I feel like I need to look like I know what I'm doing. It's really normal for those particular voices, those fearful voices, to pop up with those particular messages. And so rather than thinking, oh my gosh, I am a weirdo. Oh my gosh, my opinions are terrible. And I don't have enough depth here. There's no way I'm going to feel anything other than inadequate because life is chaos and you can't predict what's going to happen next. And no one's going to want to listen to me anyway. So sorting out that those are the voices of the gates of the ajna and the splenic center and the solar plexus center, sorting out that those are the voices of those particular fears that are either activated or defined in my design. They now are, it's sort of like family members. I recognize them. They aren't necessarily going to go away. and and it's not even that I need to certainly push them down or deny them or fight them or any of those things. Rather, I can look at them and say, oh, okay, if I am afraid of chaos and being rejected for being weird and having my opinions challenged, then I can look at how much of someone else's expectations am I thinking I need to meet mentally. And when I feel inadequate because I don't have the depth, or I can't show or access the depth that I believe is needed, that is me facing an existential moment in my life. Am I enough? Right? Am I adequate enough? Do I have the depth needed to basically survive? And then when I hear the voices of the two gates that are activated in my solar plexus, I can recognize that the silence on the part of another person might be deafening for me, or I might be afraid that I'm not being listened to, or I can look out and think the world's going to end any day, or something terrible is going to happen. We never know when that is. And so those emotional ones particularly are just ones for me to basically kind of befriend, to sit beside, to say, yes, I know where you come from. And I also know that you're not really based on any actual evidence. It's just sort of part of the theme song. potentially for those gates. And the antidote to all of these voices of the fears of the awareness center gates is to return to strategy and authority, which for me as a projector is to wait to be recognized and invited correctly. And the way I'll know if I'm being invited, first recognized correctly and then invited, is if the person or the situation is supporting me in staying aligned with my motivation, which is innocence. So as long as I can return to that, and my authority is my G center connected to the throat as a self-projected projector. So for me, the most important things are to pivot my attention from all those fearful voices to the questions. Will this make me happy? Will this help me express my truth? And is it taking me in a direction that is correct for me? And when I give my attention and my presence to my authority, which is asking those questions, all the fears subside on their own. I don't have to do anything to make that happen. So I hope that opens a doorway for you to explore whether you have definition in those awareness centers, whether you have gates that are either activated or a part of a fully defined channel in those awareness centers. Learn about the different fears of each of those gates. Learn what those voices sound like. Not so you can respond to them or fix them or crush them into silence, but so they are a signpost. Time to go back to my strategy and authority. All the things that are uncomfortable, all the things that give us anxiousness or mental anxiety or fear for our survival, they're really just reminders that we might not be actually giving our presence and being heart to heart with our strategy and authority. All right, talk to you next time.